The image of the Middle Ages as a filthy, squalid era persists stubbornly in popular imagination, as if the very notion of cleanliness belonged to a future world. But what if this enduring myth hides deeper truths about a complex era that wrestled with hygiene in ways both practical and profound? As we embark on this journey through time, invite yourself to step beyond the shadow of cliché and explore the real face of medieval hygiene, a world where water flowed through communities, baths were a ritual of renewal, and the fight against disease was scrupulously waged amid hardship. Before we delve deeper, take a moment to subscribe to Mundo Antiguo if you haven't already. Where history comes alive beyond textbooks and myths, find their truest voices. And while you're here, I'm curious, tell me in the comments from where you're watching and what medieval tales have captured your imagination so far. Your stories and questions help make this voyage richer for all. The medieval world was one of contrasts and contradictions. It was an age where monasteries echoed with the sound of water running through stone fountains, and where urban streets sometimes echoed with waste and neglect. The truth of hygiene lay neither in oversimplified disdain nor in romanticized cleanliness, but in a patchwork of daily practices shaped by geography, class, belief, and necessity. In towns and cities, innovations in sanitation emerged early on. Systems of waste removal, cesspits, and river bathing were known and employed by those who could afford or govern them. Public bathhouses thrived, acting as hubs not only for cleanliness, but also for social and even medicinal gathering. These establishments were places of ritual washing, where the body and the spirit met, in water that was often infused with herbs believed to heal or protect. Yet, medieval hygiene was more than infrastructure. It was deeply woven into the cultural and spiritual fabric. Cleanliness was linked inseparably to purity, both bodily and moral, influenced heavily by religious doctrine. The Church encouraged bathing for spiritual renewal, especially during certain feast days, though attitudes fluctuated with the tides of clerical interpretation and local custom. The act of bathing carried symbolism beyond the physical. It was an immersion into order from chaos, a shedding of worldly dirt that mirrored the soul's cleansing. In many ways, water was the great equalizer, a conduit to health and holiness. Soap, although often rudimentary by modern standards, was crafted from animal fats and ash by skilled artisans, its use widespread among those who valued not only hygiene but social status and pride. Within rural settings, life demanded its own adaptations. Simplicity ruled, but so did resourcefulness. People bathed in rivers and lakes, often collectively, turning necessity into ritual. Natural remedies for hygiene were drawn from plants and minerals, passed orally from generation to generation, a seamless blend of medicine, magic, and everyday care. The stories of pervasive medieval filth often stem from later periods' critique or misinterpretation, projecting fears of pestilence or urban congestion onto a vast and diverse epoch. While it is true that certain areas suffered from sanitation issues, these were exceptions rather than rules, often linked to wartime, siege, or economic collapse. In fact, many medieval cities boasted regulations designed to maintain cleanliness, including the removal of waste and the control of animals. Medieval hygiene also extended to the treatment of clothing and linen. Laundry was a frequent and labor-intensive task, fundamental to maintaining both appearance and health. Wealthy households employed laundresses and bath attendants, while ordinary folk took pride in regularly cleaning their clothing and bedding, dispelling the notion that they lived in perpetual grime. Health and hygiene were inseparable. The rise of hospitals and the early understanding of contagion through cleanliness underscored efforts to combat disease. Remedies blended herbal knowledge with empirical observation, yielding treatments that emphasized purifying the body, air, and living spaces. So how did this complex mosaic of practices become overshadowed by the idea that medieval people shunned cleanliness? Partly, it is the power of stereotype, a shorthand that simplifies history into easy symbols. It is tempting to distill an entire millennium into caricatures of dirt and ignorance. Yet by doing so, We obscure the bravery, innovation, and humanity that thrived beneath the grime. As this chapter closes, consider your own assumptions about the past. What tales have you accepted without question? The medieval world invites us to listen closely, to hear the flow of waters, the murmurs of bathhouse steam, the quiet dignity in a mother's washing hands. It calls us to see beyond myth and to embrace history's fuller story, rich with detail and alive with struggle. This is but the beginning of our exploration into medieval hygiene. Together, we will uncover the baths that soothed kings, the herbs that cleansed villages, and the enduring human quest for purity amidst imperfection. Remember to subscribe to Mundo Antiguo to continue this journey into the often surprising, always fascinating realities of our ancient world. And as always, share your thoughts below. What surprises you most about medieval life so far? Your voice is the spark that lights our shared path forward. In the tapestry of medieval life, water and bathing emerge not as marginal notes, but as vibrant threads interwoven with health, culture, and spirituality. Contrary to the popular image of squalid, water-shunning peasants, historical evidence reveals a nuanced relationship between people and water that challenges our assumptions. Baths were both a public and private ritual, an occasion of renewal, and a profound gesture of cleansing far beyond mere hygiene. Throughout Europe, from the grand halls of nobility to the humble cottages of villages, water was a vital resource integrated into everyday life. Rivers, springs, and wells served not just practical purposes, but also spiritual ones. The sound of flowing water was believed to carry purifying properties, washing away impurities of body and soul alike. Even those dwelling in the simplest of homes made efforts to secure clean water for drinking, cooking, and washing, underlining its revered status. Bathing, too, was far more common than many imagine. Medieval bathhouses flourished in towns and cities, often quite elaborate in design. These were not merely places of cleanliness, but social hubs where community life unfolded. Men and women frequented these establishments for relaxation, health treatments, and the exchange of news and ideas. Bathhouses were sometimes associated with healing springs, drawing visitors seeking relief from ailments, and they took on roles akin to health spas of today. The rituals in bathhouses included not only soaking, but also the use of steam and scrubbing with herbal infusions. This knowledge derived from both tradition and the transmission of medical and hygienic theories, some inherited from Roman times. The combination of heat, water, and aromatic plants created a sensory experience that cleansed the skin and invigorated the spirit, sanctifying the body as a temple of life. In addition to communal spaces, private bathing held a significant place in the rhythm of daily life, especially among the upper class. Nobility and royalty were recorded to engage in bathing as part of their regimen, often incorporating scented oils and perfumes to complement the cleansing process. These practices weren't merely indulgences, but proactive approaches to health, believed to ward off ailments and maintain vitality. Water's spiritual symbolism permeated these bathing rituals. In Christianity, bathing often paralleled rites of purification, echoing baptismal imagery. This confluence of faith and cleanliness elevated the act to sacred dimensions. Holy water was used to bless bathtubs or springs, imbuing the water with protective power. Thus, bathing carried a dual purpose: physical purification and spiritual renewal. The rhythmic cadence of bathing days punctuated the medieval calendar. Feasts and festivals often featured communal baths, blending festivity with cleansing. For instance, the celebration of the Feast of John the Baptist was linked to water rites, emphasizing themes of rebirth and purification. These occasions reinforced communal bonds and cultural identity, weaving hygiene into the fabric of social life. The availability and usage of water also varied with geography and social strata. Coastal regions and riverine communities had easier access, often utilizing natural bodies of water for bathing and washing. Inland populations adapted with wells and cisterns, devising systems to collect and purify water. Despite occasional scarcity, medieval people demonstrated ingenuity in managing this precious resource. Medieval texts and literature occasionally reflect attitudes toward bathing that might seem contradictory. On one hand, there were campaigns against excessive indulgence, linking prolonged bathing to moral laxity or physical weakness. On the other hand, texts praised the benefits of moderate bathing, especially for the sick or elderly. This ambivalence highlights the cultural balancing act between bodily care and spiritual vigilance prevalent in the period. Moreover, hygiene extended beyond the individual to fabrics and spaces. Washing clothes and linens was critical to maintaining health, and laundering could be a frequent and communal activity. As fabrics filtered sweat and dirt, their cleanliness was paramount to comfort and disease prevention. Historic records show the use of boiling water, alkalis, and herbal additives, revealing sophisticated knowledge of cleansing agents. The water that bathed medieval bodies has flowed through centuries as a symbol of renewal, resilience, and respect for life's fragile balance. It invites us to reconsider the medieval era not as a time of neglect, but as one possessing rituals and wisdom, attuned to its gifts. Bathing was a sacred act, a passage from the sullied to the pure, from the mundane to the sacred. As we continue this exploration, remember that beneath the layers of time and myth, a people once immersed themselves in water's transformative embrace. They understood that cleanliness was not mere survival, but an art of living, an ancient dialogue between body and spirit. This chapter's journey reveals water not as an element to fear or avoid, but as a living thread connecting us across ages. Reflect on your own daily rituals of cleansing and renewal. The water that flows through your life is the echo of countless hands that sought in its depths not just cleanliness, but a brush with the divine. In the next chapter, we will examine the surprisingly advanced medieval approaches to sanitation and waste, continuing our unraveling of myths about dirt and decay. Translate. The medieval bathroom often evokes images of chamber pots, open sewers, and a foul-smelling existence. Yet this picture greatly oversimplifies the varied and sometimes surprisingly sophisticated sanitation practices that existed throughout the Middle Ages. As we venture beyond popular myth, we uncover a world where medieval people innovated and adapted to manage their waste in ways that balanced practicality, health, and social order. Sanitation during the medieval period was a complex interplay between geography, social status, and evolving urban infrastructures. In rural areas, outhouses and privies, simple wooden or stone structures situated away from the main dwelling, were common. These facilities, often placed near streams or pits, aimed to isolate waste and mitigate odors and health hazards. Though primitive by modern standards, they represented intentional designs rather than reckless neglect. In medieval towns and cities, sanitation underwent more concerted development. Regulations known as sanitary ordinances appeared as early as the 12th century, mandating the removal of waste from streets and households. These laws reflected growing awareness of public health and the dangers posed by stagnant filth. Towns engaged workers to clear refuse and maintain cesspits, often dumping waste into designated rivers or moats, a practice that, while crude, sought to preserve habitability. Translate. The oft-misunderstood cesspit played a crucial role in medieval waste management. These underground pits collected human waste and were periodically emptied by manual laborers known as gong farmers. This unglamorous profession was vital in preventing waste accumulation and controlling the offensive smell that could otherwise overwhelm living quarters. Such workers operated under strict laws to protect public health and order, highlighting an early form of civic responsibility. In places of power and wealth, latrines sometimes featured rudimentary flushing mechanisms, using water to carry waste away. Palaces and monasteries occasionally employed lead or stone pipes to direct waste into sewage channels or distant marshes. While these systems were far from perfect, they demonstrate early attempts at engineering solutions to everyday problems. Medieval hygiene did not stop at waste disposal. The cleanliness of the body and environment was often connected to spiritual well-being, encouraging people to maintain their surroundings. For instance, many households deposited waste away from water sources to prevent contamination, a practice rooted in both superstition and empirical observation. Translate. The popular depiction of streets clogged with human and animal waste, though exaggerated, finds its kernel in real challenges of medieval urban life. Dense populations, limited sanitation technology, and variable enforcement sometimes led to unpleasant conditions. However, chroniclers and city statutes reveal persistent efforts to combat filth through community oversight and regulatory frameworks. A fascinating aspect of medieval sanitation involves the use of urine as a cleaning agent, and in industries such as tanning and laundering. Recognized for its ammonia content, urine was collected and used in various processes despite its unpleasant origins. This resourcefulness exemplifies a practical approach to daily life's necessities. Moreover, cultural attitudes influenced how people approached sanitation. In some regions, public latrines and bathhouses were places of social gathering, suggesting that body waste and cleansing were integrated into communal life rather than isolated acts of shame. Translate. Religious practices also intersected with sanitation habits. Monastic codes often included directives on latrine use, cleanliness, and waste removal, emphasizing order and purity. These guidelines influenced surrounding communities, reinforcing the link between faith and health. Medical theories of the time, particularly those related to humorism, also shaped sanitation practices. Balancing the body's humors included expelling waste promptly to avoid illness. This medical framework lent further importance to the control and management of bodily excretions. In sum, the medieval approach to toilets and waste management was neither wholly primitive nor entirely modern. It was a dynamic system evolving with social needs, technological possibilities, and cultural beliefs. Dispelling the myth of unrelenting filth allows us to appreciate the ingenuity and perseverance of medieval societies in shaping hygienic practices. Translate. This chapter aims to shed light on the overlooked sophistication behind the medieval toilet, offering a vision of a past where human dignity and practical necessity converged around sanitation. By viewing medieval waste management through this lens, we gain insight into the daily realities and communal efforts that sustained life amid constraints. As we progress, we will continue to unravel how the medieval world balanced body, environment, and spirit, revealing a civilization deeply engaged in the art of cleanliness, even when faced with adversity. The next chapter will journey into the world of soap, scents, and the fragrant rituals that carried meaning far beyond mere odor control, inviting us to rediscover the senses of a time long past. Translate. In the realm of medieval hygiene, soap and scents were far more than symbols of mere indulgence or luxury. They were essential components of health, identity, and social standing. Far from being the exclusive domain of the wealthy, soap making and the use of aromatic substances spanned social classes and geographical regions, each contributing to an intriguing narrative about cleanliness and self-care in the Middle Ages. The crafting of soap in medieval times was a skilled art rooted in natural materials readily available across Europe. Typically, soap was produced using animal fats, such as tallow or lard, combined with alkaline substances derived from ashes of hardwood fires, creating a substance effective for cleansing. These handmade soaps varied in quality and fragrance, often infused with herbs and flowers like lavender, rosemary, or juniper, known for their therapeutic as well as aromatic properties. While soap was accessible to many, its availability and use often depended on social rank and geographic location. Nobility and the emerging bourgeoisie took pride in their fragrant soaps, often importing exotic scents from the East to complement their grooming rituals. In contrast, peasants relied on more basic versions, yet even these contributed significantly to maintaining hygiene and reducing skin ailments. Translate. Beyond the soap itself, medieval Europeans embraced a rich culture of scents. Perfumed gloves, pomanders filled with spices, and floral waters were popular among the elite, symbolizing refinement and status, but also serving practical purposes. Aromatics were believed to mask odors from unwashed bodies and living conditions, while simultaneously purifying the air, a crucial consideration in crowded towns and cities. Medicinal texts and herbal manuals of the time reveal that many herbs used in soaps and perfumes were selected for their antiseptic and anti-inflammatory qualities. The medieval apothecaries blended and superstition, creating remedies that addressed both physical and spiritual cleanliness. This holistic approach extended to personal care rituals, where scent and soap intersected with faith and health. Public bathhouses, often centers of social life, complemented these practices by offering scented baths enriched with herbs and flowers. These establishments sometimes offered massages and treatments believed to improve complexion and vitality, early precursors of spa culture. Translate, however, the use of scents in medieval Europe also carried moral and cultural significance. The Church, while valuing cleanliness as a virtue, occasionally warned against excessive perfuming, associating it with vanity or moral laxity. Balancing personal hygiene with spiritual humility was a common theme in sermons and religious writings, reflecting deeper societal tensions around the body and soul. Folklore and literature further illustrate the symbolic power of cleanliness and scent. Stories of fair maidens with fragrant hair, or knights whose armor bore traces of sacred oils, conveyed ideals of purity, grace, and divine favor. These narratives reinforced the idea that scent was more than smell. It was an aura that communicated virtue and status. On a practical front, soap and scented products played roles in disease prevention. With the recurrent outbreaks of plague and other illnesses, maintaining cleanliness was understood as a vital defense. Baths infused with aromatic herbs were thought to strengthen the body's resistance, while smoke from burning incense was believed to cleanse the environment from harmful spirits or miasmas. Translate. Knights and soldiers especially valued soap and scent, as body odor was not only a personal concern, but a matter affecting morale and camaraderie within camps and armies. Soldiers carried portable soaps and scented cloths to maintain hygiene during campaigns. These practices highlight the intimate connection between cleanliness, discipline, and readiness for battle. The production and trade of soap and perfume became significant economic activities in certain medieval cities. Soap makers formed guilds, regulating quality, technique, and pricing, while merchants traded exotic spices and aromatics along established routes connecting Europe to the East. This commercial dimension underscores the importance of hygiene-related products in medieval society. Religious festivals and communal rituals occasionally incorporated the use of scented oils and soaps, blending spiritual purification with physical cleansing. These ceremonies celebrated transformation and renewal, integrating personal hygiene into broader cycles of faith and community life. Translate. Despite the challenges of the time, medieval people displayed a remarkable awareness of the link between cleanliness, health, and well-being. Their use of soap and scents was a testament to their resourcefulness and cultural depth. It reminds us that even before modern, the pursuit of hygiene was a profound human endeavor intertwined with beauty, belief, and survival. As this chapter closes, reflect on the invisible legacy of those scents and soaps. Each fragrant herb, every bar of soap carried with it stories of healing, identity, and aspiration. These ancient aromas still linger in our rituals today, inviting us to breathe in the layered history of care and culture. In the upcoming chapter, we will explore how medieval clothing and personal attire played a pivotal role in expressing and maintaining cleanliness, progressing our journey into a world where every detail spoke of the silent art of hygiene. Translate. The medieval bathroom often evokes images of chamber pots, open sewers, and a foul-smelling existence. Yet this picture greatly oversimplifies the varied and sometimes surprisingly sophisticated sanitation practices that existed throughout the Middle Ages. As we venture beyond popular myth, we uncover a world where medieval people innovated and adapted to manage their waste in ways that balanced practicality, health, and social order. Sanitation during the medieval period was a complex interplay between geography, social status, and evolving urban infrastructures. In rural areas, outhouses and privies, simple wooden or stone structures situated away from the main dwelling, were common. These facilities, often placed near streams or pits, aimed to isolate waste and mitigate odors and health hazards. Though primitive by modern standards, they represented intentional designs rather than reckless neglect. In medieval towns and cities, sanitation underwent more concerted development. Regulations known as sanitary ordinances appeared as early as the 12th century, mandating the removal of waste from streets and households. These laws reflected growing awareness of public health and the dangers posed by stagnant filth. Towns engaged workers to clear refuse and maintain cesspits, often dumping waste into designated rivers or moats, a practice that, while crude, sought to preserve habitability. Translate. Linen undergarments, prized for their relative comfort and ease of washing, were regarded as the garment closest to the skin and often changed more frequently than outer clothing. Nobility sometimes boasted several sets, ensuring a regular rotation and the preservation of fabric quality. Outer garments, such as tunics, cloaks, and hose, were less frequently washed, but were aired and brushed meticulously to remove dust and insects. The art of airing clothes in the sun or near fires was essential to maintain their freshness and longevity. This practice emphasized care over neglect and showcased a sophisticated approach to upkeep. Dyes and fabric treatments were also significant to the perception of cleanliness. Richly colored fabrics, especially among the higher classes, signified status and attention to personal appearance. Bright hues and well-maintained textiles communicated the wearer's social standing and respectability. Translate. Medieval people were aware of the health implications of dirty clothing. Fleas, lice, and other parasites posed constant threats, and clothing was often the medium for their transmission. Consequently, regular laundering was not simply a matter of aesthetics, but a defensive act to preserve health. Fashion itself reflected hygiene concerns. Tailored, close-fitting garments allowed for easier movement and cleaner wear, while heavy layers could be removed and cared for individually. Accessories like belts and purses played roles in keeping clothes clean and organized, indicating a layered understanding of practical dressing. The church also influenced perceptions of dress and cleanliness. Modesty was closely linked with purity, leading to social expectations about clean and neat attire as outward reflections of inner virtue. Lavish yet clean clothing was acceptable, even celebrated, whereas neglect was often viewed as moral failing. Translate. Trade routes facilitated the import of textiles and soaps, expanding access to materials that enabled better hygiene. The availability of scented waters and perfumed powders, often sprinkled on garments, further enhanced personal cleanliness and social prestige. Craftsmen specializing in tailoring and fabric care enjoyed esteemed roles within medieval society. Their skills extended beyond mere construction to the ongoing restoration and maintenance of garments, indicating a culture deeply invested in the life cycle of clothing. Stories and literature from the medieval period occasionally highlight characters' clothing as symbols of status, morality, or decay, underscoring the cultural weight of dress and its cleanliness. Such symbolism conveyed broader societal values about order, respectability, and health. Translate. Moreover, festivals and religious observances often coincided with the donning of freshly laundered or new clothes, symbolizing renewal and participation in communal life. This cyclical renewal linked clothing to broader themes of purity, transformation, and belonging. The careful maintenance and social significance of medieval dress reveal a populace deeply concerned with cleanliness, physical and symbolic. Their practices challenge simplistic notions of a filthy era and invite us to see them as connoisseurs of fabric, scent, and appearance, navigating complex realities where hygiene was intertwined with identity. As you consider your own wardrobe rituals, think of the medieval hands that labored to keep fabric pure and garments fresh, balancing the demands of survival and dignity. In the next chapter, we will explore the vibrant culture of public bathhouses and their role as social and hygienic institutions, continuing our journey into a misunderstood world of medieval cleanliness. Translate. Public bathhouses in the medieval period were far more than simple places to cleanse the body. They served as vibrant hubs of social interaction, health, and cultural exchange, challenging modern stereotypes about medieval hygiene. These establishments existed throughout Europe, often organized and maintained with varying degrees of sophistication, ranging from modest communal facilities to elaborate complexes featuring heated rooms, steam baths, and medicinal treatments. In towns and cities, public bathhouses provided a setting where people from different social classes mingled, shared news, and engaged in rituals of cleansing that went beyond the physical. Bathing was woven into the social fabric, a shared experience that allowed relaxation, conversation, and even political discourse. It was a space where the boundaries between private care and public life blurred, fostering community and connection. Many bathhouses utilized a system of heated water, sourced from natural springs or heated by wood fires, creating environments reminiscent of modern spas. Baths were often enhanced with herbs, flowers, and oils, imbuing the water with pleasant scents believed to invigorate the body and soothe the spirit. These botanical additions reflected a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between and health. Translate. The ritual of bathing also encompassed practices such as exfoliation, massage, and steam inhalation, each contributing to bodily wellness. These treatments were sometimes prescribed by physicians or healers who recognized the therapeutic properties of water and warmth in treating various ailments. The medicinal aspect of bathhouses elevated them to centers of early healthcare, blending hygiene with healing. Religious and moral attitudes influenced the development and acceptance of public bathing. While some religious authorities viewed the practice with suspicion, associating it with moral laxity, others supported it for its health benefits and the refinement it encouraged. Bathhouses were sometimes linked with monastic communities, where cleanliness was a virtue intertwined with spiritual discipline. Despite their popularity, public bathhouses faced periods of decline and criticism. Social concerns about modesty and the spread of disease, especially during outbreaks of plague, led to stricter regulations and closures in some regions. Yet their legacy endured in various forms, influencing later traditions of hygiene and public health. Translate. Architecturally, many bathhouses were marvels of engineering, incorporating systems for heating water and circulating steam. Designs often featured separate areas for men and women, though some allowed mixed bathing at certain times. The structure of bathhouses reflected their multifunctional roles, including spaces for relaxation, exercise, and socialization. Economic considerations played a role in bathhouse operation. Fees for bathing varied, with some facilities offering free access to the poor, while others catered exclusively to wealthier patrons. The bathhouse industry employed a wide range of workers, from attendants and masseurs to perfumers and herbalists, creating vibrant local economies around the culture of cleanliness. Bathhouses also served as venues for artistic expression and cultural rituals. Music, poetry, and even theatrical performances occasionally accompanied bathing sessions, transforming these spaces into arenas of cultural vitality. Such activities fostered a sense of belonging and elevated the everyday act of cleaning into an aesthetic experience. Translate. In rural areas where public facilities were less common, communal bathing often took place in rivers, lakes, or specially constructed pools. These natural settings contributed to the social and spiritual dimensions of bathing, connecting people directly with the landscapes that sustained them. The symbolism of water in cleansing, renewal, and rebirth resonated deeply in medieval consciousness. Bathing rituals echoed the sacraments of faith, especially baptism, reinforcing themes of purification and spiritual awakening. By immersing themselves in water, individuals participated in an ancient dialogue between body and soul, darkness and light. Contemporary reactions to medieval bathhouses sometimes reflect modern biases, but archaeological and textual evidence reveal their importance and popularity. They were dynamic spaces that offered comfort, community, and continuity in a world often marked by hardship and uncertainty. Translate. As we immerse ourselves in the world of medieval bathhouses, we begin to see the Middle Ages not as an era defined by dirt and deprivation, but as a time rich with practices that honored the body and nurtured communal life. These centers of culture remind us that hygiene was a shared journey, a bridge between the personal and the social, the sacred and the mundane. Looking forward, we shall explore how health and medicine intertwined with these hygienic practices, unveiling the medieval understanding of cleanliness as a vital shield against disease and decay. Stay with us on this unfolding voyage into the depths of forgotten rituals and surprising truths. Translate. In the shadowed corridors of medieval medicine, hygiene emerged not as an afterthought, but as a central pillar of health and disease prevention. Far from the image of blind superstition, medieval healers developed a pragmatic understanding that cleanliness and sanitation could ward off ailments, grounded in the theory and practice of their time. This fusion of observation, tradition, and belief reveals a civilization keenly aware of the fragile boundary between health and decay. Medical doctrines during the Middle Ages were deeply influenced by Galenic theory, which posited the balance of bodily humors as essential to well-being. Maintaining this balance often involved purging the body of impurities, a concept that extended naturally to personal and environmental cleanliness. Physicians advocated for regular bathing, fresh air, and the removal of waste, not only as comforts, but crucial hygiene measures to maintain harmony within the body. Manuscripts from medieval medical schools detail preparations of herbal washes, fumigations, and ointments designed to clean and heal the skin while preventing infection. These treatments combined empirical knowledge with symbolic significance, where cleaning the body was linked to purifying the spirit and removing miasmas believed to cause illness. Translate hospitals, though rudimentary by modern standards, incorporated hygiene into patient care. Wash basins, linen changes, and regulated cleaning of rooms were part of the regimen, aiming to minimize contagion. Monastic infirmaries, in particular, modeled their practices on notions of cleanliness linked tightly to spiritual discipline and healing. The connection between water and health was a recurring theme. Herbal infusions, mineral waters, and baths played therapeutic roles, with natural springs often attracting pilgrims seeking cures. Health was seen as a balance with the environment, and pure water was essential in that symbiosis. Hygiene extended to diet, as food cleanliness and safe preparation were recognized as preventive measures. Medieval cookery included knowledge of herbs and spices that not only flavored, but also preserved and cleansed food, reflecting an early appreciation of microbiology and sanitation. Translate. Regulations in cities aimed at preventing the spread of disease frequently included sanitation standards, such as the maintenance of clean streets and the management of waste. These civic measures, sometimes enforced with penalties, demonstrate an awareness of public health principles centuries ahead of their time. Epidemics like the plague starkly illustrated the necessity of hygiene. While understanding of transmission was limited, responses included quarantines and heightened cleanliness to reduce contact and contamination. Cultural adaptations emerged to address fears and realities of disease spread, often entwining hygiene with ritualized behaviors. Wound care was another domain where hygiene held paramount importance. Medieval surgeons emphasized cleaning wounds and dressing them with antiseptic herbs to prevent infection, demonstrating a keen practical knowledge despite lacking germ theory. The use of clean bandages, wine, and medicinal herbs formed the bedrock of such treatments. Translate. The psychological dimension of cleanliness was also prominent. Cleanliness was associated with order, self-control, and social respectability. Maintaining personal hygiene conveyed discipline and honor, indirectly promoting communal health by encouraging responsible behavior. Religious practices reinforced hygiene's significance. Prayer and confession were sometimes coupled with symbolic acts of purification, aligning spiritual and physical cleanliness. Holy water, ritual washing, and the sanctity of the body added layers of meaning to hygienic action. Women played key roles in health and hygiene, acting as caregivers and midwives, guiding families through practices that combined folk wisdom with emerging scientific thought. Their knowledge of herbs, sanitation, and cleanliness was essential in maintaining daily health. Translate. Despite the challenges posed by limited technology, the medieval world's commitment to hygiene as a protective force remains evident. Their strategies, though sometimes imperfect, reflect a thoughtful engagement with the needs of both individual and society. As we uncover this layer of medieval life, we see hygiene not as a simple matter of cleanliness, but as a complex, vital shield in the human struggle against illness and decay. This understanding deepens our appreciation for medieval medicine and invites us to view hygiene as the timeless guardian of life. With this insight, we prepare to explore in the next chapter how religious beliefs shaped hygiene, blending body and soul in a sacred covenant that influenced medieval attitudes and practices profoundly. Translate. In the medieval world, religion was a profound force shaping every aspect of life, and cleanliness was no exception. The intertwining of spirituality and hygiene created a unique cultural framework where physical purity was often perceived as essential to spiritual sanctity. This chapter explores how religious beliefs deeply influenced medieval attitudes and practices toward cleanliness, bathing, and overall hygiene. The Church, as the predominant spiritual authority, preached the virtues of purity not merely as a metaphor, but as a tangible condition reflecting one's moral and spiritual state. In many ways, cleanliness was a sacred act, a visible sign of holiness and preparation for entering the divine presence. This belief imbued everyday hygiene practices with profound religious significance. Baptism stood as the most vivid example of water's sacred transformative power. The ritual symbolized the washing away of sin and the rebirth into a cleansed spiritual life. This rite echoed into medieval practices where washing became less about mere comfort and more an act of ritual purification. Many believed that regular bathing paralleled spiritual cleansing, and thus the body's upkeep was a form of devotion. Translate. Monastic orders exemplified this symbiosis of faith and hygiene. Monks and nuns followed strict rules on cleanliness, seeing it as a pathway to discipline and piety. Their daily routines included ritual washings and carefully maintained living quarters to honor both God and the body as His creation. This disciplined care set standards that extended beyond monastery walls into broader society. Religious festivals and feast days often included communal washings and symbolic gestures of purification, linking cyclical celebrations to the renewal of body and spirit. The Feast of the Purification and various saintly commemorations emphasized washing as a communal and sacred act, reinforcing bonds and renewing faith. However, the Church also navigated tensions regarding modesty and the body's exposure during bathing. Concerns about temptation and sin led to regulations limiting mixed bathing and dictating appropriate behavior in bathhouses. These restrictions highlight the balancing act between embracing cleanliness and safeguarding spiritual morality. Translate. Moreover, religious teachings influenced perceptions of disease and impurity, encouraging cleanliness as a defense against sin's physical manifestations. Illness, often seen as a punishment for sin or spiritual failing, prompted calls for both medical and spiritual cleansing, where bathing and prayer were intertwined remedies. The use of holy water extended these concepts into daily life. Sprinkling it around homes, churches, and on persons was believed to ward off evil spirits and protect health, blending tangible and intangible elements of cleanliness. Sanctified oils and perfumes played roles in both hygiene and ritual. Anointing with fragrant substances was associated with health, blessing, and sanctification. This practice linked physical freshness with divine favor, creating a sensory language of purity. Translate. Pilgrimages often included communal bathing in sacred springs, believed to possess healing powers. These journeys combined faith, healing, and hygiene, underscoring water's role as a mediator between the earthly and the divine. Religious literature and sermons frequently addressed cleanliness, urging believers to care for their bodies as temples of the Holy Spirit. The moral emphasis on cleanliness fostered social norms, where hygiene was a marker of both personal virtue and communal respect. Despite occasional ascetic critiques of bodily care as vanity, a majority saw hygiene as compatible with spiritual growth. This integration rather than opposition shaped medieval culture, making cleanliness a shared value with deep roots in faith. Translate. The influence of religion on medieval hygiene bridged physical practice and spiritual aspiration, revealing a society where washing and worship were inseparable. This understanding reshapes our view of the Middle Ages, presenting a world where the sacred and the mundane intertwined in every gesture of cleanliness. As we reflect on these insights, we perceive medieval hygiene not as a mere historical curiosity, but as a luminous expression of humanity's quest for purity, in body and soul. Our next chapter will delve into the intimate world of medieval childhood, examining how hygiene shaped the tender years and forged early lessons in care and survival. Translate. The care of children in the Middle Ages was a delicate blend of nurture, tradition, and emerging medical understanding, all while navigating the formidable obstacles posed by environment, disease, and social expectation. Hygiene for the young was never a trivial matter, but a pressing concern, woven into every aspect of child-rearing, from infancy through early youth. Newborns and infants, vulnerable and fragile, received special attention when it came to cleanliness. Midwives and mothers employed a range of practices intended to protect the child from infection and ensure comfort. Baths were given using warmed water, often infused with soothing herbs such as chamomile or lavender, thought both to cleanse the body and calm the spirit. These rituals, though practical, were also imbued with a sense of sacred care. Diapering, though different from modern practices, was managed with resourcefulness. Cloths were frequently changed and washed to prevent sores and infections. In many households, specific tools and vessels were dedicated to the care of young children, highlighting the importance given to maintaining hygiene at these critical stages. Translate. As children grew, daily washing became a custom reinforced by both familial and communal norms. Teaching the young about personal cleanliness was part of their education, linking hygiene to health and morality. Children learned to wash hands before meals, keep their clothing clean, and attend to their grooming, instilling lifelong habits through example and instruction. The challenges were significant. Common illnesses that spread rapidly among children included scabies, lice, and other parasites, often exacerbated by close living quarters and limited resources. Parental vigilance combined with communal interventions worked to mitigate these threats. Herbal remedies were commonly applied, and practices such as head shaving aimed to reduce infestations. Nutrition and hygiene were tightly connected. Mothers and caregivers understood that cleanliness in food preparation and feeding was crucial to minimizing disease. Breastfeeding was encouraged, recognized for its nutritional and immune benefits, reinforcing the bond between hygiene, health, and motherhood. Translate. Midwives served crucial roles beyond birth, guiding mothers in care practices that encompassed hygiene, healing, and protection from superstition. Their knowledge was drawn from a rich tapestry of experience and folklore, blending corrective measures with protective charms. Pediatric medical knowledge, though limited, began to evolve. Physicians and healers offered treatments for childhood ailments that acknowledged the importance of cleanliness. Baths, herbal concoctions, and dietary advice formed the triad of their therapeutic approach. Community life influenced hygiene education as well. Schools and religious institutions participated in fostering cleanliness, viewing it as preparatory to moral and spiritual discipline. Rituals of washing and grooming were integrated into daily routines, emphasizing their role in the holistic development of the child. Translate. Play also reflected hygienic considerations. Toys and games often imitated adult life, including tasks of washing and caring, helping children assimilate social practices through imaginative engagement. The death rates among children during the Middle Ages were tragically high, a somber backdrop that motivated careful attention to their care. While many factors contributed, hygiene was recognized as a modifiable element that could influence survival. Folklore and popular wisdom interwove with medical practice in child hygiene. Protective amulets, incantations, and simple rituals to ward off evil eyes and illness revealed a cultural dimension where cleanliness extended into the spiritual realm. Translate. Medieval cities, with their bustling streets and tightly packed homes, presented unique sanitation challenges that required innovative solutions and communal effort. The growing populations of urban centers intensified the demand for effective waste management and hygiene practices, shaping city planning and public policy in ways often overlooked by modern observers. The dense concentration of people compounded issues related to waste disposal, fresh water supply, and general cleanliness. Narrow streets, shared living spaces, and the proximity of markets and residences meant that hygiene failures had immediate and widespread consequences. These urban pressures spurred the development of systems designed to mitigate health risks and sanitation breakdowns. Municipal authorities frequently enacted ordinances addressing these concerns, demonstrating an early form of public health governance. Regulations dictated the removal of refuse, the prohibition of waste dumping into streets or rivers, and mandated the regular cleaning of public spaces. Markets were cleansed, animal waste managed, and households monitored, reflecting a community-wide commitment to survival through cleanliness. Translate. Water supply remained a critical challenge. Wells, fountains, and cisterns were established to provide potable water, often protected by laws regulating access and cleanliness. The risk of contamination was understood, prompting precautions despite limited knowledge of germ theory. The communal use of water sources necessitated a level of vigilance and cooperation rarely acknowledged in popular narratives. Sewer systems, though rudimentary compared to modern engineering, existed in forms ranging from open ditches to covered channels. Their effectiveness varied widely, depending on local resources and expertise, but their very presence attests to medieval attempts at sanitation infrastructure. Maintenance of such systems was a significant civic responsibility, sometimes contracted to specialized workers. The concept of designated latrines or public toilets was implemented in certain urban centers, often connected to these sewer networks or situated in strategic locations. These facilities aim to concentrate and manage human waste, reducing ground contamination and odors. While far from perfect, they represent important milestones in urban hygiene. Translate. Despite best efforts, conditions could degrade rapidly during crises such as sieges, famines, or epidemics. Cities struggled under the weight of increased waste and reduced capacity to manage it. These episodes highlight both the resilience and fragility of medieval urban sanitation systems. The cultural stigma around waste and dirt influenced personal and public behavior. The desire to keep homes and streets clean was motivated not only by health, but also by social standing and moral codes. Cleanliness denoted order and civility, while filth could signify neglect or sin. Guilds and associations sometimes played roles in sanitation by regulating trades and crafts that produced waste or pollutants. Tanners, butchers, and other trades were required to dispose of byproducts responsibly, integrating economic activity within the framework of public health. Translate. Public spaces such as marketplaces implemented strategies to manage refuse, including scheduled cleaning and containment, attempting to preserve cleanliness amid commerce. These measures helped prevent outbreaks of disease and maintained the city's functionality. Personal sanitation within homes relied heavily on the quality and availability of water, household cleaning routines, and the management of waste. Chamber pots, cesspits, and outhouses formed the basic tools for domestic hygiene, supplemented by communal services. The threat of diseases such as plague prompted heightened attention to sanitation. Quarantine measures, isolation of the sick, and increased cleansing rituals were part of responses that, while rudimentary, reflected an understanding of hygiene's role in disease control. Translate. Ultimately, medieval cities navigated a precarious balancing act, striving to maintain sanitation in the face of demographic and environmental pressures. Their successes and failures offer surprising insights into how communities forged health and hygiene under challenging conditions. Reflecting on these urban sanitation practices deepens our appreciation for medieval ingenuity and communal resilience. It invites us to see the Middle Ages not as uniformly grim, but as a dynamic period of evolving public health initiatives. In our next chapter, we will travel beyond cities to uncover the realities of rural hygiene, revealing how simplicity and environment shaped the daily lives of most medieval people, completing our panorama of hygiene practices across medieval society. Translate. Life in the medieval countryside was marked by simplicity and an intimate relationship with the natural environment, which deeply shaped hygiene practices among rural populations. Away from the bustling urban centers, villagers developed practical and adaptive approaches to cleanliness that balanced the demands of survival with cultural and spiritual beliefs. Water was the cornerstone of rural hygiene practices. Many households relied on wells, springs, or nearby streams as sources of fresh water, which served multiple functions: drinking, cooking, washing clothes, and personal bathing. Rural communities often constructed rudimentary but effective water channels and storage systems to capture and conserve this vital resource, reflecting an awareness of its importance despite limited technological means. Bathing routines in rural areas were closely tied to seasonality and local conditions. Cold water immersion in rivers or ponds was common in warmer months, while winter bathing was rarer and often limited to quick washes or the use of warmed water indoors. Communal washing not only fostered hygiene, but reinforced social ties, with women gathering to collaborate on laundering and exchanging health remedies. Translate. The use of natural materials for cleansing extended to the creation of homemade soaps, balms, and herbal infusions. Locally gathered plants such as nettles, rosemary, and yarrow were valued for their purification and healing properties. These botanical resources were central to healthcare and hygiene, bridging the gap between domestic routine and medicinal knowledge. Toilets in rural homesteads were usually simple outdoor latrines or pits located away from living quarters, designed to minimize contamination and odors. Waste management was a shared responsibility, with practices aimed at keeping the living environment as clean and safe as possible within available means. Animal husbandry, a cornerstone of rural life, required careful attention to sanitation. Stables and pens were cleaned regularly to prevent disease among livestock, understanding that animal health directly impacted human well-being. Dung was often composted or used as fuel, showcasing a practical recycling of resources. Translate. Food hygiene was a critical concern as well. The rural diet depended heavily on fresh produce, grains, and preserved meats. The processes of drying, smoking, and salting not only prolonged food shelf life, but also contributed to cleanliness by reducing spoilage and microbial growth. Child rearing in the countryside emphasized cleanliness rooted in care and practicality. Parents taught children the importance of washing hands before meals and after work, recognizing the link between cleanliness and health. Midwives played essential roles in instructing women on washing practices and remedies to protect mothers and infants. Religious customs infused rural hygiene with symbolic meaning. Ritual washings before church attendance and during feast days reinforced connections between physical purity and spiritual grace. Rural chapels often incorporated holy water fonts, encouraging congregants to cleanse symbolically as well as physically. Translate. Despite the challenges posed by isolation, poverty, and limited infrastructure, rural populations displayed resilience through resourceful hygienic practices. The environment was both a source of sustenance and a factor demanding respect and care to maintain health. Community gatherings often aligned with hygiene-related activities, such as collective washing days or festivals celebrating water and cleansing rituals. These events strengthened social cohesion and underscored the cultural significance of maintaining purity within the hardships of rural life. The natural rhythms of daylight, seasons, and agricultural cycles guided daily routines, where hygiene was an embedded practice rather than a separate task. This integration reveals a holistic approach to living, where the body, environment, and spirit coexisted in balance. Translate. Rural medieval hygiene, though often overshadowed by urban narratives, exemplifies the adaptability and wisdom of everyday people who navigated the complexities of health with limited means. Their practices remind us that simplicity did not imply neglect, but a profound engagement with the essentials of life. As we conclude this chapter, envision the quiet dignity of village life, where humble acts of cleanliness were acts of survival and respect for the natural world. Next, we will examine the vital role women played in maintaining hygiene, revealing how care, knowledge, and tradition intertwined to safeguard health in the Middle Ages. Translate. In the tapestry of medieval hygiene, women were often the unseen but essential weavers, orchestrating the delicate balance between care, cleanliness, and survival within their households and communities. Their role transcended mere routine. It was a vital, multifaceted responsibility that shaped the health and well-being of families across the social spectrum. From the moment of birth, women held primary responsibility for nurturing and hygiene. Mothers and midwives ensured infants were bathed, clothed, and cared for with attentiveness that integrated practical knowledge and deeply rooted traditions. The early washing of newborns was accompanied by rituals invoking protection and blessing, blending the spiritual and physical elements of cleanliness. Women's expertise extended to managing the household's water use, from drawing clean water to overseeing its storage and application in cooking, cleaning, and washing clothes. This stewardship was critical in preventing disease and maintaining the sacred spaces of home, where every corner reflected the women's care and diligence. Translate. Laundry was predominantly a woman's task, often communal and ceremonial. The rhythms of washing, drying, and repairing clothing connected women to each other and to the cycles of the natural world. Herbal infusions and natural detergents were commonly used, reflecting a deep understanding of local flora and its cleansing properties. The preparation and use of soaps, ointments, and perfumes were also largely managed by women, who acted as caretakers of both bodily and spiritual cleanliness. Their knowledge, passed through generations, melded health, beauty, and superstition, underscoring their role as custodians of well-being. In urban settings, women's roles expanded into the economic sphere as laundresses, soap makers, and midwives. These occupations not only sustained families, but contributed significantly to the hygienic fabric of towns. Guilds and confraternities sometimes included women, recognizing their indispensable contributions. Translate. Religious beliefs reinforced the importance of women in hygiene. Many saints and religious figures venerated cleanliness and charity, inspiring women to embody these virtues through their daily labors. The home was often seen as a microcosm of spiritual order, with women serving as guardians of both household sanctity and health. Women also functioned as informal healers, blending herbal remedies with hygiene practices. Their role in preventing and treating disease involved cleaning wounds, administering baths, and instructing others in hygienic customs. This caregiving fostered community resilience and transmitted valuable medical knowledge. Cultural narratives and literature frequently reflected women's centrality to hygiene, depicting them as bearers of wisdom and guardians of domestic order. Their intimate knowledge of cleanliness was celebrated as a form of power entwined with caretaking. Translate. Despite their vital roles, women's labor in hygiene was often undervalued or overlooked in historical records, yet archaeology and folklore illuminate the depth and impact of their work. This recognition invites a fuller understanding of medieval life, where running a household was an exercise in management and love. As we consider the complexity of women's contributions, we see that hygiene was not merely a chore, but a social art and a sacred duty. Their work laid the foundation for healthy generations and nurtured the fragile ties that held communities together. In the next chapter, we will investigate the origins of many hygiene myths and explore why misconceptions about the medieval period's cleanliness persist so stubbornly in popular culture, continuing our quest to bridge legend and reality. Translate. The pervasive image of the medieval period as an age of filth and neglect is a deeply ingrained myth that has shaped popular perceptions for centuries. This chapter peels back the layers of misconception to reveal the historical, cultural, and social origins of these stereotypes and how they came to dominate the narrative about medieval hygiene. One of the earliest sources of muddled ideas about medieval cleanliness comes from later periods, particularly the Renaissance and Enlightenment, where scholars and writers often contrasted their times with the so-called Dark Middle Ages. The term itself, historically used to denote decline and ignorance, contributed to a lasting bias that painted medieval people as dirty and backward. Accounts from travelers and chroniclers further fueled these misrepresentations. While some observations of poor sanitation in certain cities or during crises like the plague were accurate, these descriptions were frequently generalized, ignoring the diversity of practices and the context of the times. Urban overcrowding, poverty, and lack of technology presented genuine challenges, but they were not universal nor defining characteristics of medieval life. Translate. Educational materials have sometimes recycled outdated assumptions, embedding these stereotypes into the foundations of historical knowledge. The resulting popular imagination sees hygiene through a lens distorted by centuries of caricature, overshadowing the evidence of medieval care and complexity. Nevertheless, recent scholarship, archaeology, and reinterpretation of sources have initiated a corrective movement. Excavations of medieval latrines, bathhouses, and towns reveal sophisticated infrastructure and robust hygienic customs. Manuscripts detailing recipes for soaps, wash rituals, and herbal remedies attest to a conscious and meaningful engagement with cleanliness. Understanding the origins of myths is crucial for appreciating the real medieval world. It reminds us that history is not static, but subject to reinterpretation, and that truth requires active inquiry beyond assumptions. Translate. This chapter invites a reconsideration of medieval hygiene myths, urging us to question the narratives handed down through time and to embrace a more accurate, empathetic vision of the past. Our final chapter will reflect on how medieval lessons on cleanliness resonate with modern concerns, closing our journey with an invitation to wisdom and reflection. Translate. As we reach the final chapter of our journey into medieval hygiene, it is fitting to reflect on the enduring lessons this ancient world offers our modern lives. Historically enshrouded in myths of neglect and filth, the reality reveals a society deeply engaged with the art and of cleanliness, one that continues to resonate across centuries. The legacy of their practices challenges us to rethink not only history, but our contemporary relationship with hygiene and health. The Middle Ages teach us that cleanliness is far from an indulgence. It is a vital practice intertwined with social cohesion, health, and spiritual well-being. The medieval commitment to bathing, laundering, and sanitation, despite technological limitations, underscores human resilience and ingenuity. Their rituals, from communal baths to herbal remedies, reveal a holistic view of hygiene, connecting the body and the spirit, the individual and the community. Understanding medieval hygiene disrupts modern preconceptions. It shows that awareness of health and the importance of cleanliness are timeless values. These values were expressed through the care of the body, the home, and the environment, imbued with cultural and religious significance. They remind us that hygiene is as much about respect and identity as it is about physical cleanliness. Translate. Moreover, the medieval experience highlights the social responsibility embedded in hygiene. Sanitation was not just a private concern, but a collective endeavor, involving city ordinances, communal labor, and shared spaces. This communal aspect is strikingly relevant today, as we face challenges requiring cooperation for public health, such as pandemics and environmental crises. The spiritual dimension of medieval hygiene, where cleanliness was linked to purity and divine favor, invites modern reflection on the deeper meanings we attribute to care rituals. While contemporary life often divorces hygiene from spirituality, the medieval ethos encourages us to consider the sacredness of tending to our bodies and surroundings as acts of gratitude and self-respect. Technology have since transformed our capabilities, yet the fundamental human needs and motivations remain consistent. The medieval dedication to hygiene, despite constraints, calls us to appreciate the progress and to remember the foundations laid by our ancestors. It invites respect for traditional knowledge and the ways culture shapes behavior and health. Translate. Finally, medieval hygiene practices remind us of the impermanence and continuity woven into human history. Habits evolve, technologies change, but the core principle endures. Preserving our bodies and environments sustains life itself. Their story encourages mindfulness in how we live, care for one another, and maintain the delicate balance between and human society. As you consider what you have learned, I invite you to carry forward the wisdom of an era often misunderstood. Let it inspire a renewed appreciation for the simple yet powerful acts of washing, caring, and purifying. In embracing this legacy, we honor those who lived before us, their struggles and innovations, and we enrich our own journey through the intertwined worlds of health, culture, and spirit. Thank you for traveling with us through this exploration. If you have found value in these stories, please consider subscribing to Mundo Antiguo for more journeys into history's forgotten realms. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your voices keep our shared story alive. Until next time, may the lessons of the past continue to illuminate your path.